Hi, Recap EXE here. Today I'm going to explain a mind-bending sci-fi horror movie called The Incident. Spoilers ahead. Don't forget to drink water, sit tight, and take care. The movie opens with a flash of an old man on an escalator, then switches to snippets of a bunch of newlyweds tongue wrestling in a limousine. They arrive at a hotel and continue tongue wrestling while celebrating. The scene switches over to Carlos, coming home in an elevator and finding his younger brother Oliver agitated, high on something, which he denies. They both get into the apartment, and Oliver, panicking, tries to tell Carlos that he messed up, apologizing as he does. Carlos brushes past the apology entirely, not caring whether he's high or not. He's got good news instead. He just came from their mother's place, and she lent him enough money to finally pay off whatever debt has been hanging over Oliver for months. As far as Carlos is concerned, today's a celebration. Oliver keeps trying to tell him something else is wrong, but Carlos won't stop talking long enough to hear it. Before Oliver can get a word out, a man steps out from hiding and puts a gun on both of them. He smoothly introduces himself as Marco, a police detective. Oliver, terrified, admits he already confessed to something under pressure and begs Marco for forgiveness too. Carlos demands to see a warrant, while Oliver stays in the corner apologizing, saying they threatened to kill their mom, so he had to talk. Marco says he doesn't have a warrant and that Oliver's confession is enough. He tells both brothers they'll settle this at the station and tries to march them out to his car at gunpoint. Carlos and Oliver jump the officer, successfully overpowering him, and bolt down the stairwell of their apartment building. Marco chases after them, firing once and hitting Carlos in the leg. He looks genuinely shocked at himself for pulling the trigger. A second later, a loud explosion rumbles somewhere in the distance, and none of them think much of it, because right now Carlos is bleeding and Marco still has a gun. Oliver tries to close the wound with his sweater and tries to confront Marco for shooting his brother. Marco pins him to the wall and tells him to shut up or he'll shoot him too. Oliver picks Carlos back up and Marco escorts them toward the station as planned. They reach the first floor and Marco tries to open the door, but it won't budge. He then notices there are still many flights of stairs below them, even though they're already on the first floor. They keep going down and down. The stairwell should have ended by now. It doesn't. Marco gets frustrated and demands they show him the exit. With both brothers completely dumbfounded by the situation, Marco ventures off to find the exit himself, going from floor to floor and trying to pry open each door with his hands, but none of them budge. Each flight leads to another flight that looks exactly like the last one, and there's no door out anywhere. Marco, frustrated, spots something ahead. It's the brothers, the ones he left at the top floor. They're both shocked because they remember Marco going down the stairs, yet here he is, coming from the top floor. All three panic, and Marco climbs back up again to look for help. Carlos, panicking, suggests it's just the shock of the bullet talking. Oliver takes his turn, trying to bust open a door and fails just the same. Just as Oliver suggests escaping by the roof, Marco shows up again, climbing the stairs. They all stand there, unable to explain what's happening. Marco takes a step forward and drops his keys down the stairwell. And sure enough, they come falling back down from the top, caught in some kind of loop. Marco suggests all of this is happening because of the explosion from earlier. Carlos and Oliver both get emotional. They break open a vending machine on one of the floors to grab some water, and Oliver uses it on Carlos's bullet wound. He does what he can for Carlos's leg with nothing but his hands and cloth to slow the bleeding, checking the wound every few minutes as if checking it enough times might change what he's looking at. Marco apologizes for shooting Carlos and tries to help as well, handing over some medication for the pain. But there's no hospital to get to and no way up or down that goes anywhere new. Just flight after flight, all identical. Digging through his own wallet a moment later, Marco finds a tiny miniature playing card, which he tears up without thinking twice. Looking at a photo of his family, Marco mentions that today is his 15th wedding anniversary, and Oliver, furious at the comment, tells him that if his brother dies, he'll kill Marco's family. Hours pass as the three of them survive on snacks from the vending machine with no way of telling whether it's even night outside. By the next day, Carlos is dead from blood loss. His last words to Oliver are about how he never learned to enjoy the moment he was actually in, always chasing whatever came next instead. And he tells Oliver not to make that same mistake. Grieving and furious, Oliver notices something Marco already quietly clocked earlier and dismissed without a word. A vending machine on their landing has been completely restocked, item for item, exactly the way it looked a full day ago, down to the same coins still sitting in the change slot. Blaming Marco for Carlos's death and disgusted by how little he seems to care about any of it, Oliver wrestles the gun away from him and threatens to finish what Marco started. Marco insists, almost pleading, that pulling the trigger wasn't something he consciously chose to do, like his own body did it without him, a beat before his mind caught up. The two of them argue over what that even means, stuck together in a stairwell that refuses to end, with nowhere to walk away to even if the argument turned violent. Somewhere else, a woman named Sandra is preparing for a trip with her two kids, Daniel and Camila, to visit her ex-husband, with her new husband Roberto along for the ride. Roberto is visibly nervous about the whole trip, worried about bonding with kids that aren't his, but Sandra reassures him the drive itself will be a good chance to get to know them. Daniel packs a small deck of miniature playing cards for the ride, the same kind Marco found torn up in his own wallet back in the stairwell, though neither family has any way of knowing that yet. They hit the road. While driving, Roberto finds a small piece of bamboo, which he flings out the window, and they make small talk with the kids, Roberto joking that they're on an infinite road. Daniel says he needs to use the bathroom, so they stop at a gas station, where Roberto, without thinking it through, hands Camila a fruit juice, one Sandra furiously points out she's allergic to. They get back in the car, and her breathing starts going bad almost immediately. Trying to help, Roberto accidentally destroys Camila's only inhaler. Sandra asks Daniel to grab the backup inhaler from the bag. He tells her he forgot to pack it. Panicking, Sandra orders Roberto to turn the car around and get them home. At almost the same moment, a distant explosion sounds off in the background. With Camila's condition getting worse, they stop at the gas station from earlier to get pills that might help with the asthma attack, then take off again. Because of the situation, Sandra and Roberto get into an argument in the car, and Daniel, trying to calm Camila, yells at them to shut up. They drive, and keep seeing the same gas station up ahead. Both parents get out of the car to try to get help at the gas station, but there's absolutely no one around. They get back in and drive off, but keep passing the exact same gas station they just left, over and over, no matter which direction they think they're heading. Sandra starts panicking as Camila's condition gets even worse, and there's still no way out of the loop. They spot the same road sign they've now passed over 20 times, so Roberto stops the car. Sandra pulls Camila out and lays her on the grass to help with her breathing. They get back on the road again, and Camila faints. The clock on the truck now says they've been driving for hours on this infinite highway. Roberto, about to lose it, spots the same sign again, then gets out of the car and heads into the brush to try to find help on foot, leaving Sandra alone with the kids in a car parked on a road that leads nowhere. Sandra, still panicking, drives off with the kids without waiting for Roberto. Without her inhaler, Camila dies in the back seat. Sandra, unable to process what's happening, stops the car for a moment, convincing herself this has to be a nightmare. Daniel carries Camila out of the car, and Sandra drives off alone, trying to wake herself up by physically leaving her own children behind on the roadside. Daniel picks up his dead sister's body himself and starts walking in the opposite direction from his mother, alone, carrying her the whole way, stopping again at the same sign from earlier. Sandra, still in shock, parks at the gas station and goes inside to hide from what she's convinced is a nightmare. Eventually, Roberto and Daniel end up converging back at the same spot on the road they never actually escaped. And one by one, worn down, they stop trying to outrun it. 35 years pass. Every single day, all of their belongings duplicate themselves overnight, and over decades, those duplicates pile up into towering heaps around them, useless and endless at the same time. In the stairwell, the guys down there no longer have their youth, but they cope well with time and the twists it gives them. Fortunately, for the ones who keep breathing, their resources replenish automatically as time repeats itself. Everything from the snacks in the vending machine to Carlos's belongings in his backpack multiplies to the point of commercial hoarding. They arrange everything and live as if the staircase is their home. One level holds everything that's multiplied out of the backpack. Books, red and black Sharpies, spools of thread, nail cutters, Imp 3 players, and headsets. Another level has a makeshift shower made of water bottles. Another holds their garbage and empty bottles. The rest of the levels are their rooms, and one holds nothing but the skeletal remains of Carlos and a growing stack of money. Oliver and the detective pass their time differently. Oliver exercises constantly, using the stairs as his treadmill, through nothing but discipline and repetition, while the detective exercises his mind instead. They still spend time together. Oliver asks Marco about his wife and children while training his upper body, and as another exercise, carries the detective up and down the stairs, since Marco is now crippled and can no longer walk. He's taken to leading an elderly, broken down Marco through ritual worship of Carlos's bones, the only thing left of his brother after 35 years down there, a routine neither of them ever explains out loud, just repeats. On the road, Sandra and Roberto, both elderly now, have turned to each other physically in a way that looks more like instinct than any kind of relationship left standing. Daniel keeps to himself, barely speaking to either of them anymore, having built some kind of separate existence out of nothing but the same stretch of road. Sandra eventually dies of old age, worn down by 35 years on a road that never changed under her feet. Roberto and Daniel bury her as best they can, using whatever tools have piled up around them over the decades. Standing over the grave, something shifts in Roberto, a sudden, unexplainable clarity, arriving right as he feels his own death getting close behind it. He tells Daniel he finally understands why they've been stuck here this entire time, and that he needs to explain it now, before he runs out of time to. What he tells Daniel next isn't something any of them could have guessed. None of this, he says, is actually real. It's a separate, split-off version of reality, a shadow world that peeled away from the real one the moment tragedy struck, and it's been looping the same 35 years ever since. Roberto admits his real name isn't Roberto at all, it's Ruben, and he was 10 years old back in 1949 on a school trip when he and his friend Juan got left off the canoe and were sent out instead on a raft built from green bamboo. The instructor guiding them caused an accident of his own, and Juan bled to death within 3 days, just like Carlos did. Ruben and that same instructor then spent the next 35 years floating on that raft without ever once reaching land. Before the instructor died, he passed Ruben a warning: write down his real name so he'd never lose track of who he actually was. Ruben never did it. Now, decades later and dying himself, he's passing that same warning on to Daniel, telling him to write his name down the way he should have, because Ruben never listened, and he spent his whole life since forgetting it. At the same time, back in the stairwell, elderly Marco is telling Oliver something just as impossible. Marco isn't really Marco. He's actually Daniel, the boy who once wandered an endless road decades ago after his sister died, all grown up and returned as someone new, having forgotten who he used to be entirely. He'd even convinced himself he had a whole other life as a detective, married to a woman named Fabiola, a memory that turns out to have never been true at all. Just something his mind built to fill the gap where his real name used to be. He was warned once, just like Ruben was warned, to write his own real name down so he wouldn't lose it. He never did. And now, decades later, he's forgotten everything anyway, exactly the way he was told he would if he didn't. Both dying old men lay out the same mechanism behind everything that's happened to them. These looping dimensions exist to generate something: physical movement, emotional movement, grief, joy, motion of any kind. And all of it gets fed back into the real versions of these people, living somewhere else entirely, untouched by any of this. And every single time one of these dimensions gets created in the first place, it takes a death to spark it. Carlos, Camila, Juan, all of them sacrifices that set a new loop running before anyone trapped inside it even understood what was happening. With their last breaths, Ruben begs Daniel to break the cycle by refusing to follow the path laid out for him. Marco begs Oliver to do exactly the same thing. Both boys are suddenly free to just walk away from the only reality they've ever known. They hesitate. And then, despite everything they were just told, both of them walk straight back into their own fate anyway. Daniel gets into a waiting police car and becomes Marco, decades younger, on his way to arrest two brothers named Carlos and Oliver, the exact scene the movie opened on. Oliver leaves the apartment building entirely and turns up somewhere else completely, working as a hotel bellhop named Carl, running an elevator up to the 30th floor for a newlywed bride and groom, making small talk on the ride up. Fumbling with their luggage a moment later, Carl accidentally drops the groom's emergency allergy medication. Moments after that, the groom is stung by a bee he had no way of avoiding. The cycle starts again, with two new people trapped inside it, and no memory of how they got there. Alright, that's it for this one. Click the video on screen to check out another sci-fi recap. And if you enjoyed this one, leave a like, subscribe for more mind-bending movies, and as always, drink some water. Peace!